Hey Joel, let's look at the situation where you're asking about how we came up with the conclusion n factorial is bigger than or equal to 2 raised to the n minus 1. Now you mentioned watching YouTube and looking at mathematical induction. So mathematical induction is something that to do it right really is beyond the scope of this course. So sometimes people talk about mathematical induction like at the pre-calc level, but those are not the type of proofs you're going to find on YouTube. And that's not really mathematical induction. That's sort of like mathematical induction light. But in order to do mathematical induction for real, you would really need sort of concepts and ideas that are beyond Calc 2. So the way the author video proves it is the same way I'm going to prove it. I'm just going to sort of talk through it a little bit differently than what he did, so maybe we can understand why that would be the case. By the way, this 2 to the n minus 1 is often a go-to when we're talking about these comparison tests. And so that's one to sort of remember, like, can I use that 2 to the n minus 1 type thing? Okay, so let's first look at a specific example, a specific case. So I'm going to propose, what if we did n equals 5? So 5 factorial would equal 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And 5 factorial, I have to type that in my calculator here, is 120. Okay. And also, by the way, if I had 2 to the n minus 1, I'd have 2 to the 5 minus 1, which is 2 to the 4th. And 2 to the 4th I'm going to rewrite as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and 2 to the 4th is equal to 16. So this is a very specific example, and sure enough it holds true that 5 factorial is in fact bigger than or equal to 2 to the, oops, sorry, my screen's gone crazy here a second, is bigger than or equal to 2 to the 5 minus 1, which is the same as 2 to the 4th. Okay, that certainly is the case. And when we write this out, if we write out 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things on my list. And sure enough, that's because n was equal to 5, right? There are 5 things on my list. And I see that 5, 4, 3, 5 and 4 and 3 are all things that are certainly bigger than 2. So 5 is bigger than 2. 5 times 4, let me write this out. 5 is bigger than 2. Well, 5 times 4 would have to be bigger than 2 times 2, right? So 5 is bigger than 2, and 4 is bigger than 2. So 5 is bigger than 2, and 4 is bigger than 2. So if I multiply two things that are bigger than two things that are smaller, those things would be the case. And I can keep doing this idea. So 5 times 4 times 3, that has to be bigger than 2 times 2 times 2. And that's true because 5 is bigger than 2, and 4 is bigger than 2, and 3 is bigger than 2. I keep multiplying them together. And then finally, if I did 5 times 4 times 3 times 2, well, that has to be bigger than or equal to 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And that has to be true because 5 is bigger than 2, and 4 is bigger than 2, and 3 is bigger than 2, and 2 is the same as 2. So I'm sort of throwing in that equal sign. Okay? So that's the idea with the case of 5. And you could make the same argument with 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, right? So let's do that really quickly with 6, and maybe you'll get the idea. So n plus 1, in this case, would be 6. So my new n equals n plus 1, which is 6. So my new n is 6 if I do n plus 1. So 6 is definitely bigger than 2, and 6 times 5 is definitely bigger than 2 times 2, and 6 times 5 times 4 is definitely bigger than 2 times 2 times 2, and 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 is definitely bigger than 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Same idea that we were doing before. 6 times 4 times 3 times 2 has to be bigger than or equal to 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Do I have enough? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 times 2 and 5. Okay? And once again, that's true because 6 is bigger than 2, and 5 is bigger than 2, and 4 is bigger than 2, and 3 is bigger than 2, but 2 is equal to 2, so I snuck this equality in there, so bigger than or equal to. Okay, so that's the idea. So now if I do that whole thing for n, what do I get? If I write it out algebraically, n, and the question mark is factorial, is that bigger than or equal to 2 raised to the n? And I'm going to put a big question mark because I don't know yet, right? Alright, so then I just say, well, n factorial, if I remember what n factorial is, if I write it out, that's equal to n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 times, and then dot, 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 times 3 times 2. And 2 to the n, well, if I wrote that out and I did the same number of terms as I have, so how many terms do I have here? 1, 2, 3, and then a dot, 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 4, 5, right? So let's write that out. 2 times 2 times 2 times dot, 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 and then times 2 times 2. So that tells me, if I wrote that all out, let me do it in a different color, n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 times dot, 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 times 3 times 2 has to be bigger or equal to 2 times 2 times 2 times dot, 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 times 2 times 2, right, in general. Well, this left-hand side over here, that left-hand side is equal to n factorial. We already wrote that, right? So this left-hand side is equal to n factorial. That has to be bigger than this right-hand side, which is 2 to the n. So that must be true. So that part's true, right? When I match up all the algebra, just putting in the number of n's. Well, now look, if I took this exact same statement that I've written up here in green, and I crossed off the last 2, right? Now I don't have 2 to the n anymore. What do I have? I have 2 to the n minus 1. So that means that I have, let me write the same color, n factorial has to be bigger than or equal to 2 to the n, and then I crossed off that last one, so minus 1. Right? And so n factorial has to be bigger than or equal to 2 to the n minus 1. And if I wrote it all out, that would be like saying n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 times dot, 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 times 3 times 2. That has to be bigger than, and on the right-hand side, or I'm going to put 1 less. So I have 1, 2, 3, dot, 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 4, 5 terms. Well, now I'm going to put 1 less. I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, oop, I actually wrote the 3. 1, 2, 3 2's times dot, 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 and instead of putting both, I'm just going to put one of them. All right, so this over here has to be even more less than the one that we did up there because I crossed off the last 2. So therefore, I'm going to say that n factorial has to be bigger or equal to 2 to the n minus 1.